Welcome back to Windows into Ethereum. Today's episode is Holocene creatures. Balance, balance, balance. Everything strives for it, but it's never achieved. When contrasts were created, they said that everyone would have one. But humans, through every method, social, economic, caution, war, famine, have evolved to not even feel the connection anymore. Some are born without them altogether now. Most of them are specially selected to be reapers, just for that purpose. The universe has been unbalanced since the beginning. War between so-called good and evil, spilling into the Holocene, only made worse. They tried to alleviate it by placing regulated portals throughout every sector, but it provided them no relief because the rumors were too alive to stop them. It was said that there was a runaway portal, the only way out without permission. Well, the only way out with your body still intact, for possessing a Holocene body was banned long ago. But enough of that. Here's what we know about Holocene creatures: the good, the bad, and the unspeakable. Originally, there were the two diseases, lycanthropy and vampirism. Rumors spread that it was caused by demonic interference, but no one has been able to prove anything. Despite how human they were monstrous still. Monstrous enough for the churches to turn their backs on them, and the denial of salvation damned most, consciously or subconsciously, into the crimson after they passed. Many found it hard to hope in God when their closest envoys shunned them, hunt them, slaughter them in their name. All Lycans would turn under the full moon, lured into broken bones and bloodlust, once bathed in moonlight. Unable to stop their heightened instincts, they were considered a plague upon society. Over a few generations, those who survived would slowly mutate, with more control over their instincts, at least until the Great Night. Vampires were beautiful creatures. The disease stole their ability to see the sun, blistering their skin and far too bright for the permanent night vision they developed. The disease was meant to kill its host, making it impossible to eat food or drink water, skyrocketing their white blood cells until they overtook their red blood cells, destroying every exit until someone did the unthinkable. Blood may not have been a cure, but it was the only way to live. Enough blood ensured their organs wouldn't shut down, that they got enough nutrients, vitamins, and water. The excessive white blood cells did have its upsides when someone could survive. It allowed for an accelerated healing process, kept its host young and free of disease. However, if many go missing, humans go hunting. They were not on the brink of extinction like Lycans, but they were the first to evolve. Everyone can tell you the story of the first elder vampire. Even the knight has first-hand accounts of what happened that night. They summoned the Bastion, but no demon. Lucifer was not one to meddle in the affairs of humans, bit soured by the experience. But even he did not consider them human. They struck a deal, but it was not open to all. These vampires would be known as elder vampires. They could walk in the sun. They could drink things other than blood. They could infect other humans with their venom containing the virus, though they would not turn into elder vampires themselves. And greatest of all, they had the power to manipulate the mind through a newfound influence called suggestion. This power would go down through generations, and the only thing it would cost them was their soul. Every soul. From dawn to world-ending dusk come. These things would live their lifetime and then become one of the Lux. No one could tell you exactly when the Great Night was, but it changed everything for the Lycan race. After many, many generations of slaughter, on the brink of extinction, someone made a deal. Cyprus, young and in the middle of a war against the heavens, was summoned. It was said that night under the full moon, as they struggled to fight their transformations and what would ultimately be their death sentence, they begged for his help. It was said that the Bastion gazed upon them, and they did not need to fight any longer. The wolves calmed, as he may not have been the ruler of the moon, but he was the heir of animals. They promised to pay any price, for any aid he could spare, for any safety he could provide. After hearing their pleas and desperation, he gave them control over the beast, control over their bodies, and severed their ties to the moon, instead tying them to the earth, changing their forms into that of a full animal, and in turn giving his blessing to change at will. The price to pay was their undying loyalty. He did not want their souls. He did not want their lives. No one knows why he was so lenient. Some demonic historians say that the Lycans were some of the first amongst his generals and armies. Some say that despite their humanity, the animals inside are what he cared for. And some say he simply did it to spite the heavens. But this would change the Lycans into the first werewolves. Unlike vampires, who are alive and well in droves, it was said that all Lycans became werewolves. But who really knows? Witches and mages and Cambions are not so different in the eyes of the night, but to each other they have some quite big differences. Witches are the most well-loved of Holocene creatures. They gained their powers not much different how the elder vampires did it. by summoning a demon. If a witch managed to summon a bastion or some other high-ranking demon, they could strike a deal, as long as they had something the other wanted. It became common practice that these witches would not just sell their own souls, no. They would sell the souls of all that came after them as well. It only takes one to make a deal, and their kin would be damned for all time. Their souls are property of that demon or bastion. In turn, the creature would offer its own irregular magic to the witch, and in turn their kin, for eternity. Anytime that witch would do magic, as the human soul was not irregular, and therefore did not have the excess to use magic, they would borrow from that demon or bastion. Almost no demons make deals like this anymore, for almost all solar energy has a limit. And while sharing with one other being may not be a problem for some, as the kin are exponential, most demons could not keep their end of the bargain without risking death themselves. In the case of the demon passing, ownership could be passed on through will, but most have now passed their eternal contracts over to their bastion for currency or request. That means in the modern day, the vast majority of witches are now under contracts with bastions, and thusly secure a place in good standing after death, well versed in magic, growing up worshipping certain bastions, partaking in demon culture throughout their primary lives, makes the phrase, "a witch has two primary lives," a common phrase in the Crimson. Cambions, by complete opposite, are the most hated beings on any realm or plane, an amalgamation of human and demon that never should have existed, looking far too human, as if possessed, running the risk of turning into gargantuan monsters, expanding past their own skin, a consequence of runaway solar energy, which they should not ever have possessed. They are killed on sight by all creatures, bound to this pantheon or not. To bring one into the world is to welcome everyone, demon or otherwise, to death. Mages, however, live teetered on the edge between the love of witches and the disdain for Cambions. They're much like witches in many ways, but still different. Like witches, they worship a bastion. Like witches, they have a place after death. Like witches, they are considered human. Where they differ shocked many. Unlike witches, mages have irregular souls. Unlike witches, they use their own magic. Unlike witches, they descend from Cambions. Of course, no one knew at first. Demons simply thought humans may be evolving. It wasn't until decades of acceptance that a scientist discovered the connection. There was outrage at first. Progression in social standing regressing. Mages are of distant relation to their Cambion relative, often many, many generations removed, only sparking into mages at random and low rates. Their souls and bodies had time to adjust to irregularity. Unlike Cambions, they didn't have secondary forms, proving how diluted their demonic side was. Except for one thing. Like demons, they gained markings when they used magic. They got the same warning as any other demon. After more research was done, public opinion of them returned to normal. They remained just a little bit more liked than the average demon, but didn't often live up to the notoriety of witches. Lastly, and the most uncommon, fire tamers. What sets them apart from an ignis mage, or a fire-descended witch, is that they learned from the dragons. When the dragons flew upon the earth, the companion of choice for guardian angels, they became an easier target. They died rapidly in war, giving their souls and bodies to the heavens to make weapons for the king's arsenal, the holy armory. No one is quite sure how they came along. If God granted them a human body for safety, if they taught humans their magic, or if they somehow procreated with humans to create an in-between. But all that is known is that these beings did not come from the hands of their king. Despite agreeing that their origins come from dragons, they seem to be abandoned by their god. Demonic historians say that when the dragons existed, they could breathe fire made from the light of the aether. However, no fire tamer has. They tried and tried, but after many generations of failure, they lost their identity. Along with fast reflexes, enhanced agility, and an expanded lifespan, fire was their only source of magic. It was their tie to the past, and without it, they felt they lost a piece of themselves. Eventually, they would turn their backs on their origins. With their soul irregularity, they took the chance and picked up the demonic system. They paid in other ways, but they felt it was worth it. To feel the fire in their hands, in their veins, and in their hearts once more. This decision would land them in the Crimson after their death, but to their fortune, Solaris refused to involve himself in war, and welcomed them with open arms. The only other creature left in this pantheon is the Laphilim, though in some sectors it's considered illegal to even say their name. Not much is known about them, for most of our bastions have driven them to extinction. The price to pay when they opened the heavens gave the human race the guardian angel. But that's all I'm really allowed to say about that. Thank you so much for watching, and you can participate in this world through our Discord server, the Tower of Babel. And I'll see you on a different day, or maybe a different lifetime.